Yeah.
Let's go. Turn that shit up.
Yeah. I'm kicking. Yeah. I'm kicking shit like Karate Kid. I'm ballin' like Mikey, I've been like kid. I'm getting this money and makes him sick. I promise my mama will all be rich.
All right, I think we're ready to go.
We're rolling?
Yep.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Deseret MMA Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Garrett Kimball. And as always, I'm joined by the wonderful Kobe Mooney.
What's up?
Sunday, September 18th, fresh off of Corey Sandhagen versus Song Yadong. It was a great night of fights.
It was a really good night of fights.
Before we get jumped into all of these great fights and what's coming, I just want to take a second to introduce to everyone the Great Basin Edge headquarters studio. It's great to be here. It's a great vibe we got going on down here.
We are missing out on Bob, though.
Bob, of course, will always be missed. He'll be around as much as he can. He just could not quite fit it into his schedule this week. He tried to work it out. He did want me to tell you guys all sorry for missing this week and that he'll for sure be back next week. How was it, man? How was your Saturday yesterday?
It was a good Saturday. Some good fights. I only watched the main card, but
On the main card.
I think you watched the prelims.
No, of course, yeah. I watch all of it. I love all of it. I'm a slut for it all. Give it all to me. It was a great night of fights at the Apex. Kind of good to get settled back down at the Apex after a couple weeks.
I don't know how I feel about the vibe at the Apex, dude.
No? You don't love
The
the
crowd's
Apex?
missing at the Apex, dude.
The crowd's missing, but it's almost like a refresher to get back to the Apex.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice. The Apex was built beautifully, and it served its purpose beautifully during the pandemic to get us through such a rough time with no sports. It was amazing. I love the Apex. I always like to get back there. Dana White says that the Apex will always be around. I think this is something that we'll see as we start getting back to more events with crowds after a couple weeks of with fans and everything. They'll come back, kind of reset. They've got the Dana White's Contender series going on weekly, of course.
Mm-hmm. Another five contract night at the Contender series this week, I believe.
I did not have the chance. I was actually out shooting around the golf. I did not have the chance to watch it this week. But I did hear it was another 5 contracts. You know, the Contender Series is great. It's doing a lot of great things for the UFC, giving them their own kind of promotion to build up this talent, kind of like the Ultimate Fighter. A lot of good fighters, like someone we'll talk about tonight with Joe Pyfer coming off of there. It's great. I guess we can kind of get started. It ended up being a really good card. It was kind of a slow start. 3 or 4 decisions in a row. I think 5 or 4 out of the first 5 were all decisions, which is, they were still good fights. It was still fun to watch. One early that kind of stood out to me was Javid Basharat. That was a good fight. Basharat had a really big second round. He had a really high output. This was in the bantamweight division, which is always looking for new contenders. Bantamweight is great. It's one of the most stacked divisions in the UFC right now. Bantamweight and lightweight division. That's killer's row right there. Basharat he used a lot of spinning kicks, which everyone loves to watch. The people that can do the spinning kicks that land, they can do the spinning elbows, and they have nasty elbows from inside out. So yeah. It's always fun to watch. I love watching that. In the corner of Basharat was Jake Shields. I don't know if you know who Jake Shields is. That's someone that's kind of rolls around with Nate Diaz. He was a former Strikeforce middleweight champion. He actually fought George St. Pierre in the UFC and drug him out to a decision. I think it ended up being there was one judge that had it 50-45, and then I think the other 2 was 48-47. So he won rounds on George St. Pierre, and he's kind of a coach now. He beat Dan Henderson, Carlos Condit, and I think Robbie Lawler too. So Jake Shields is a good coach. He's kind of around. He was also there for the Khamzat beef a little bit with Paulo Costa. Him and Paulo Costa were kind of drilling some stuff during that fight week when Khamzat got in that. That was like the first of all the shit of last week, which we can put all that behind us.
Yeah.
Jillian Robertson, come back. Jillian Robertson, someone that's been ranked and kind of been on the climb up, and then she's kind of settled down. She's no longer ranked, and she was kind of getting a good bounce back. Her opponent, Maria Agapovia. I butchered that, but they both trained at American Top Team down there in Florida. So they actually trained together, and Jillian said that she always got the better of them. But I want to stop right here with this. Something that I noticed in this fight that I never noticed before, which I noticed later on the card a couple of times, and then even later on when it showed like a recap of like Anthony Hernandez, he had it tonight, and I guess he had it in his last fight, and I've never even noticed it before, but these fighters that have gauges in their ears, they're putting tape over their ears.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And I think that's to stop fingers from going in through the ear hole.
In your gauge hole, dude.
So that's something that stood out to me about that fight. It was a good one. Wasn't the craziest, but Maria landed some really, really nasty elbows. Anytime Jillian shot, she was not landing these nasty elbows from inside. But Jillian ended up getting on top, and I think it was in the second or third round, and she got her with like a rear naked choke.
It was the second round.
Second round, yeah, rear naked choke. That was a pretty good one. To celebrate Hispanic History Month, Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, Daniel Zellhuber walked out with a sombrero.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a sombrero on. It was great. That was a pretty good fight. Let me switch over here to ESPN. Trey Ogden ended up winning that fight, unanimous decision. Loma Lukabunmi beat Denise Gomez. She actually cut Denise open really bad. Like within like the first minute, she was just dumping blood.
Dude, it was a bloody night.
It was a bloody night, and even on all over the prelims, there was blood everywhere. You jumped in on the main card, and it was even bloody for the main
octagon
card.
was already bloody.
It was an extremely bloody night over here at the UFC. Something also, Luma, as the rounds, in between rounds, between 2 and 3 as it ended, Luma, like, some women wear, like, a shirt over their fight gear, and she, like, pulled it off, like, in between rounds, like, the camera was on her. She just, like, ripped it off. She's like, I'm done with this shit. She, like, chucked it. I've never seen someone do that shit before. That was a good one. Luma ended up winning a decision. And then we got on to the Trevin Giles. Trevin Giles looked really good against Luis Cosi. That was actually a really fun fight to watch. 30-27, 29-28, and 29-28. It was a really close fight. Not the highest output. Both men had a little bit of control time. Trevin Giles went 2 for 5 on takedowns, and Cosi went 1 for 1 on takedowns. And Cosi was supposed to be the big wrestler in this matchup. Trevin Giles is someone that fought at light heavyweight and then middleweight, and now he's down to welterweight. I think his last fight was that, so I think he could be wrong, but I think he's 2-0 now at welterweight. That was a fun fight to watch. Kind of scroll around here. Damon Jackson looked good against Pat Sabanati. That was another good one. Ended up with KO. Quick finish. There was only 16 strikes landed for Jackson in that fight. And then I guess we roll into the main card now. This is kind of where you jumped in a little bit.
Yeah, dude. The main card. It was a really good card. One of the best cards I've personally seen. All the fights were good on it. You know, it started out with Anthony Hernandez versus Marc-Andre Barriault. Barriault.
Yeah. Marc-Andre, yeah.
And that fight was... Anthony Hernandez kind of dominated that fight, I feel like. It was really good striking, really good on the ground. And then in the third round, picked him up and just dropped him on his head. That was crazy.
Huge slam.
I tuned in right before that happened. So that's what I saw when I first...
I've seen people go out for less of a slam, and when you're talking at middleweight, that's 185 pounds at weight. They're probably walking in there around 190, 195, if not 200 pounds. And he got slammed so fucking hard.
Yes.
Right on the top of his head. I couldn't believe that he got up.
No, that was crazy.
Hernandez is so good, and he's been around for a while. He's someone that we've seen. And I think this might be his big breakout fight to get into the top 15 and get a top 15 fight. I mean, we can kind of...
that was a really good performance from him.
Kind of do a little matchmaking here. Let's pull up the middleweight rankings. Usually the top there. A Brad Tavares fight would be great. Brad Tavares is someone that does bring the action, and Anthony Hernandez had those nasty elbows. It didn't matter if it was from outside or inside. I mean, he was elbowing him. He would take him down, and as soon as he'd kind of lose the great ground and pound positions, then he would stand up, bang a little bit, throw some elbows, and then pick him up and take him back down, slam him on his head like he did. I mean, you could do. I think Duplessis has a fight with Darren Till. Either a Chris Curtis or Brad Tavares. I'd love to see a Brad Tavares fight with those two.
That'd be a good fight.
That would, and then he also was someone that had the tape over the gauge holes from where he normally has gauges to stop. I'm guessing that's to stop the fingers from going to ripping that completely off. Then our only I believe our only heavyweight fight of the entire night.
Well, that fight ended with a submission.
Yes, it
arm
did.
Triangle.
Beautiful arm triangle. Anthony Hernandez took him down in the third round and sunk in a nasty arm triangle. It was clean and it was clinical.
And before we get too far into the main card, let's go back. And Aspen Ladd missed weight for the second time, getting her fight canceled.
We just talked about Aspen Ladd on the last podcast about how. Literally, the last thing we talked about Aspen Ladd was that she missed weight and passed out on the scale, and she still fought. So now I don't know if this is the second time in a row. I should have done a little bit better research. I don't know if this is the second time in a row, but her fight with Sarah McMahon ended up getting canceled because I believe that she missed weight by 2 pounds. I think it was about 2 pounds.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, 2 pounds. Third time in her career she's missed weight.
In her career that she's missed weight. I don't know what you do with Aspen Ladd. She's good. Aspen Ladd is really good. I'm even curious to see her record right now. Let me look it up.
I think it's probably best she probably goes up a weight class.
Yeah, she does fight at 135. She could go up to 145 at featherweight. I mean, Raquel Pennington beat her. I think Norma Dermott beat her. I don't know what she does. She's on a little bit of a skid. She's 2-3 in her last 5. After being completely undefeated, she was undefeated which Jermaine Durandamine is a fucking nightmare. Like that is a girl that'll stand even with Amanda Nunes, and most women don't. She matches her on, I believe, on height and even on weight. I mean, both those are some beast women right there. And so she lost to her, and that's nothing against her. But she is 2-3 in her last 5. I don't know what you do with her. I agree. I think they scrapped that fight with Sarah McMahon. And they tell her that she's got to go up to featherweight.
That's the second fight she's gotten canceled because of missing weight too.
Thing is, the UFC doesn't play with that for very long.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that will show up and make weight.
Well, and you gotta wonder too, because you see people like Khabib missed weight, a handful of times, and then you got like a nutritionist and cut weight the right way and was able to start getting down, And you look at
Jose Aldo, where he was so great at featherweight, like one of the greatest of all time, and he was at featherweight, and then he hires a nutritionist and ends up changing his entire lifestyle to make bantamweight, to be able to go drop down an additional 10 pounds and make a bantamweight. It's doable.
Yeah, and you don't even know the situation, but if she doesn't have a nutritionist, she probably
at this point she should probably get one. If she's doing some just like her coaches and that's it, and they're going to cut weight, that she probably needs a nutritionist. And I know that the UFC does offer like a meal system to fighters that they can use. I can't remember the name of it right now, maybe I doubt it'll come to be, but maybe.
And that even opens up the bigger question of should cutting weight just kind of go away completely.
I'm not jumping on that wagon of whether or not weight cutting should be removed. I think it's really, to me, as such a little ant on the spectrum, I think it's the only way that you can really keep a balance or not balance, but like a system of how these fights work to keep it fair competitively, to have these guys show up the day before the fight, to have to make a certain weight class. I'm all for the weight classes. I don't think we should take them away. I think that there's an opportunity to maybe bring one at like 160 and change welterweight to 175. I don't know if you could change one, but maybe a 160 weight class and maybe even adding a 190 weight class. I think some people would benefit from that. That's which I think Colby Covington would benefit being able to cut down to 160 or 165. Because I think in a world without Kamaru Usman or Leon Edwards, Colby Covington's the champion. And I don't even know if Leon Edwards could beat Colby Covington. But he doesn't have that extra weight class there because it jumps from 155 to 170, 15 pounds. And the only bigger jump than that is between middleweight and light heavyweight from 185 to 205.
Mm-hmm. The meal service, I believe, is Icon Meals.
Icon Meals, is that what it is? I think it's changed a couple of times.
It might have. This is an older. This is an article from a year ago.
Our only heavyweight scrap of the night was Tanner Boser versus Rodrigo Nascimento.
Yeah, that was a good fight too.
That was a good fight. It went to the distance. There was a couple times I thought both men could have been out. Mm-hmm. Two judges gave Tanner Boser 1 round. Nascimento ends up winning.
Nascimento did a good job of trying to, get takedowns and keep ground control and get, win the fight like by points,
And in heavyweight, Daniel Cormier said it several times during the broadcast that he'd be like, it's over. There's the takedown. There's the takedown. Because at heavyweight, it's so just the higher weight, and where Tanner Boser weighed in at 220. Most people that weigh in,
he was a lot bigger than Nascimento was a lot bigger than Boser.
Yes, and so a lot of people that walk around at 220 actually fight at 205, and he said he wasn't interested in that. And anytime Rodrigo got his hands clamped behind kind of like the underneath the butt of Boser, it was done. He had the scoop.
Used his
he
weight
dropped him
advantage.
down. He had a lot more. He had a lot of control time. Yeah, 8 minutes and 1 second to Boser's 58 seconds. Yeah, and no takedown. So it was a reversal that he got that control time or up against the fence.
Boser did outstrike him significantly.
Yeah, significant. 163 strikes as a heavyweight. I didn't even see that till just now. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Nascimento, 91 strikes, 0 leg kicks from him. Boser, 9 of 12 leg kicks.
Dude, well, I did notice when Nascimento threw punches though, is he had like brick hands, dude. Like his punches were heavy.
He's a hard hitter, which will get you, if you're a good enough brawler and you've got a chin on you in the heavyweight division, it'll get you places. It's like the Derek Lewis's and the Taito Ivas's of the UFC. It'll get you places. And he has heavy, you could see it, he has heavy hands.
It looked like a workout to throw his hands around.
But you got to be able to stop the takedown if you want to be a ranked UFC fighter. You have to be able to stop the takedowns. That was a pretty good one. We kind of kick into one of the bigger fights of the night. Yeah. The star Joe Pyfer.
Body Bags Pyfer.
Joe Body Bags Pyfer.
Body Bags with a Z.
With a Z. There ain't much harder nicknames in the UFC than Body Bags. This dude burst it out. The first episode of this season's Dana White Contender series. He comes out. He's the only one of that first episode that got a contract. Dana White says, if you want to be in the UFC, be like Joe Pyfer. He said, be Joe Pyfer. Be like Joe Pyfer if you want to be in here. Come in here and show it. He gets his first, that was in July, and he turns around, fights again here in September. Ends up KOing the guy, TKO KO.
Round one.
Round one, really quick. He said it
About
was
2 minutes in.
About 2 minutes in.
Wait,
He said it was
a minute in.
a minute. Yeah, about
Like a minute and 5 seconds, right? Yeah.
something like 3 minutes and 55 seconds in. So just
in.
about a minute
Okay.
until the end
I
of the
thought that's
round.
how much was left. Okay. Misread that.
And so he said it was a slow start for him. He come out, he was electric. He immediately took center of the octagon, dominated the octagon, had control, and just kind of let it loose. There wasn't a ton of striking. A lot of feeling out was going on, but he ended up getting the best of Amandowski, and he hit him with a nasty. It was I believe it was a fake uppercut check hook that come over the top and dropped him, and it was awesome. He stood over the top of him, flexed, screamed a little bit, and then hit him with just one more.
Dude,
to get the ref to stop
Amandowski,
it.
when he threw that punch, Amandowski woke up and had no idea who he was. Just woke up to Joe Pyfer throwing a punch at him.
It's great to see Joe Pyfer. That was on the main card, but not the top middleweight main fight.
But
I think he's going to be a star.
He will.
I really think Joe
He'll be one
Pyfer's
to
about to be a
watch.
big star. He got on the
Yeah.
mic and gave a shout out to Dana White, I guess. When he went on the Dana White Contender Series, he said, that he could not afford to pay his last month's rent. So when he went there, it was like 2 days before he got evicted. And he was like, I put all my eggs in this basket. This is what I was born to do. And Dana White paid for him a place to live for a year.
And gave him some side
And
money,
gave him
too,
some
is what
side
he
money
said.
on top of that for being the guy that showed up that night and
Mm-hmm.
kind of saved that night. Because I did watch that night, and it was what saved it. It was kind of boring. I didn't even know who was going to get contracts that night, and it ended up only being Joe Pyfer. It was a great fight, man. I'm really excited to see him. I'm curious how long it takes for him to get a top 15 fight, because as you've seen, there's the Sean O'Malley approach where they kind of give these guys some time to grow, and then Joe Pyfer, who is someone I think that is ready for that next step. I think
he is. I think he's steps above a lot of other fighters.
I agree, and I even think we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I think he's a little bit above Gregory Rodriguez, who was our co-main event tonight or last night. And so I am curious if they'll do more of the Sean O'Malley approach and let him fight these cans and build up a profile and build up a name to be this big, huge star, or they'll just feed him right to the wolves.
Yeah, that
and
will
just
be
see how he
interesting to
does,
see.
sink or swim. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he'll be really interesting to follow. He's really good. I think he could be a contender.
Andre Fili was someone that I touched on last week at the flyweight division. Featherweight, not flyweight. Featherweight is a tough division. Volkanovski's kind of got it on lock right now. I heard, and I could be completely wrong, but I heard that Volkanovski would be the backup fighter to make weight and get ready for Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev. Did you see what Khabib tweeted about that? Not to jump off of this last night's card, but did you see what Khabib tweeted about Oliveira?
No, I didn't
He
see
said he
that.
does not think Oliveira is actually going to show up.
Oh, I did see that.
He does not think he'll even show up in Abu Dhabi.
You don't think?
That's Du Bronx we're talking about. And I'm not even taking favoritism. That's Du Bronx. Like Du Bronx said, he'll start off on his back. He doesn't give a shit. It doesn't matter to him. Zero matter. You think your wrestling's better? All right. Let me and my number one submissions in the UFC put that to a test. I'll start on my back. I'd love nothing more than to see that. But we'll jump back. Andre Fili was someone I touched on last week. That was a really good fight.
That was a good fight.
Fili busted up Algio really, really early and nasty. I think he had him on the top of the head, and then I think he had him across the top of the forehead as well. That was a good fight. Fili definitely took the first round.
Yeah, he took the first round
And then
for sure.
Algio took the second round. Algio had a really high output. I was even worried a little bit for Andre Fili during that fight. For moments. Gio landed a lot of clean strikes, and it was really good.
Yeah, they kind of came into that second round like they both came out just throwing punches at each other. Like they opened up
And that's what
immediately.
Fili said. Is he felt disrespected. He felt like this was the fight that should have been talked about a lot more than what was talked about.
Yeah, that was a really good fight. My second favorite fight of the night, I think. I don't know. The whole night was a good, super good night of fights.
card.
On a different card, this would have been the best fight of the night.
Feely ends up taking Algio's back in the third round, and Algio's so busted up, he's just bleeding. And Feely said in his post-fight interview that his ear got clogged that after 2 minutes after, he still couldn't hear, and he was dumping it out, and a whole fucking blood clot come out of his ear.
Ooh, that'd be so nasty.
Like, sometimes I'll be sitting there, I'm tripping, thinking there's bugs in my ear and shit. But I couldn't even imagine a whole blood clot come sliming out of your ear.
That's disgusting.
It was a split decision. One of those judges gave Algio that round from, I'm imagining, from like the punches. He was landing sound punches. While he was stuck in that body triangle, he was landing sound punches.
I wanted to discuss that. Do you think that those punches won him the round?
That's what won him the round to me. That's the only thing I could see. Like when I'm watching it, I'm not ringside. I don't know. I don't judge professionally. But that's the only thing that makes sense to me is that one judge thought that he had a higher output because he had him in the body triangle, which is total control. But he wasn't. I mean, he was looking for a submission at one point really deep.
But then he didn't do much after that. You know,
he wasn't consistently looking.
Algio did the most damage from what he was doing.
On a striking point of view, I'm curious what the...
Like, Feely argued what was more potentially dangerous, but potentially dangerous doesn't matter because he didn't do anything with it. At the end of the day, he didn't do anything with it.
And Algio actually outstruck him 151 to 67, landed total strikes.
So, I don't necessarily disagree with that judge that marked that round as a win for Algio because he did more damage.
I don't hate it, but as a true, like a longtime fan... when you're in a body triangle like that, you have complete control of that guy. He's locked in your legs. He's not going anywhere.
But what did Feely do with it at the end of the day?
He was looking for submissions, and I would have gave him the round. I would have gave Feely the round, but I'm not pissed off.
But Algio's submission defense, when he did have it, had the choke going, Algio defended it pretty well, and that's why Feely ended up.
And he did, and there was a couple times I thought he had it. When he slipped off the hands the first time and then he relocks like that, usually it's over because that's how it works. Is you lock it in and then they peel that hand off and then they hurry and switch it over and they lock it in the other side. Usually it's completely over.
But Algio had top-notch submission defense.
He did, and I'm not trying to knock any of the guys. It was a great night of fights. It was one of the best fights on the card, if not the best. I think the main event, and we'll get to that kind of out. For me, that was my then we get to the co-main event. Chidi and Nakuni versus Gregory Rodriguez. RoboCop.
I believe it's Chidi and Jakuani.
I butchered names, so you're my fact checker. Kobe is my fact checker forever. RoboCop is a beast. I've watched his fights, the last couple of his fights. Going into this one, I didn't know if he was gonna win it. The fucking knee.
That knee, and he put his head into it too. So the knee was coming at him, and he shoved his head into it with a takedown attempt.
The knee that he ate would have killed me. That would have killed me. It would have killed you.
Would have knocked out 8 out of 10.
It would have knocked out 8 out of 10. It would have killed 2 out of 10.
Yeah,
it would have killed him. Right at the top, dead center of your face.
Just cut from in between his two eyes, cut it wide open. His nose looked like it was about to just slough off his face almost.
It added to this whole night of just blood. It was such a bloody night, and I love it as a fan. I love to see it. It's such a raw sport, and there's no other sport like it, and you don't really get to see, like, you'll go cards where no one's really cut. Like what we saw this weekend would have had a lot of people squirmish. A lot of people couldn't have seen that. There were some nasty cuts this weekend. And this is like the second worst of the night. I mean, that cut was nasty. I think he even cut him again on top of just the top of the crack. It was a great fight. I don't know how many of you guys actually watched it because the UFC Fight Nights don't get a traction like the pay-per-views, but you miss out. It's great to be a UFC fan right now, which I'm so excited to have you be my co-host here, Kobe, because you're coming in fresh, you're coming in brand new, never really looked into it, and you're coming in just. I've said this to so many people in real life, like people I have personal relationships with. There's never been a better time than right now to be a UFC fan, and I truly feel that there is something going on every single week. And the fights that they're putting on are awesome.
And even when there's not something going on with the UFC, there are a lot of other leagues that are really coming up. Like
Yes.
ONE FC and PFL are really coming
I mean, we
up.
can kind of take a jump for a second here to talk about PFL. PFL's on their shit. They've had some really, really big signings right now. I know that they just signed Shane Burgos, who was a top 15 featherweight contender. Fought Edson Barbosa. I mean, Shane Burgos is a great fucking fighter. And then I think the following week they signed Thiago Santos. Was a UFC light heavyweight fighter and even a middleweight fighter. This dude went to a split decision with John Jones and was still a ranked light heavyweight. And I can't remember the third person that they just signed after Thiago Santos. I'm drawing a blank on that, but
I don't know. I just saw it too.
Just like you said, there's all these other, like for this weekend, there's no UFC fights going on this weekend. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure we're going to be carried with PFL.
There'll be a ONE FC fight this weekend. Likely.
If you don't have the UFC Fight Pass, I really, really recommend you go get it because they have so many great fights every weekend that's going on in there. You don't even got to know what's going on. You just pull it up and right there, PFL, ONE FC.
And ONE FC is starting to stream on Amazon.
On Amazon, yeah.
ONE FC on Amazon. Their first one on Amazon was Mighty Mouse versus Moraes. That was a good fight. We watched that. That was a really good fight.
That was a great fucking fight.
Mighty Mouse, I think he's a little slept on because that division was kind of didn't have a lot of super good fighters, but he's elite. He's
so good.
He's
I would
really good.
love to see Mighty Mouse come back to the UFC.
That'd be crazy. Because he is fighting up. He's fighting 135 now on the ONE FC.
Bantamweight? Okay.
Yeah. I believe that's their featherweight. I switched it.
Yeah. So we can jump right back into where we were at with the RoboCop co-main event of this weekend. It was a great fight. RoboCop ends up out. Both men were so gassed after that action-packed first round. I mean, both men were dropped. Both men were hurt.
Dude, and after that knee, you really didn't think that RoboCop was going to come back. You really thought that fight was over. And in Jacqueline, just had to get a few more good strikes in.
I think I even texted you and said, this is over. I texted you and said, this fight's over. And look at me. Eating my own words. RoboCop ends up coming on top round 2. Early into round 2, a minute 27. He ends up. I think he took him down with about a minute left. Took all of 30 seconds. I mean, both men were so tired. He got on top. There just wasn't a whole lot for Ninjaku Annie to do. What were your thoughts on that fight? Besides the big cut, just like overall, because I had never really seen Chidi fight before, and he showed up for me. I'd love to see him fight again. I'd even welcome that rematch. That was, I mean, I hate rematch, but that was a hell of a fight.
He did show up, and you thought he'd win that fight after that knee.
Oh yeah, I thought it was over.
Yeah, everyone thought it was over. Even DC made it seem like DC was kind of writing RoboCop off. Like everyone kind of was. That fight was over, and then RoboCop made the huge comeback.
Put it on him.
Yeah, he did
and won. Mm-hmm. I love that shit, dude. That was such a
crazy ground and pound
fight to watch.
It was.
Then I guess we can jump into this main event. I think last week I called Corey Sandhagen to win. I don't know if I officially made that my prediction. If you want to see my predictions, follow us on TikTok because I will do a rapid fire prediction for every fight for every weekend. Not every fight, but at least the main card of the weekend. So make sure to follow us down there and also on any social media that you use. Instagram.
I think we'll start putting our predictions up on YouTube. Instagram too.
Yeah, okay.
Like the little fight cards we did in the group chat, we'll put those on Insta.
Every weekend at my house when we host one of these big pay-per-views, we do a little breakdown of the card. Everyone predicts it, and there's punishments that come with predicting wrong, which I've definitely felt the worst of last weekend. Shit. What's up?
My laptop just died. All right, I think we're ready to get back.
Back from our technical difficulties.
Yep, a little break. My laptop died. Forgot to plug it in before we started the pod.
Not everyone, but some of us can give a good fuck you to Kobe. Right there. But no, of course, we love everything that he does. This wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for Kobe. Let's just jump right where we left off.
Yeah, we're just barely getting into the main event.
Corey Sandhagen versus Song Yadong. I believe it was number 4 versus number 10.
Yep.
Corey Sandhagen number 4 and Song Yadong number 10.
I feel like this fight was kind of like set up to test Song against like top like contender level guys.
And Song Yadong's good.
Mm-hmm. He is good.
He's beat Marlon Cheeto Vera.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you
But
watched that Dom Cruz fight with Cheeto Vera. He's beat Casey Kenny, Marlon Moraes. I mean, Kyler Phillips, he ended up losing to, which Kyler Phillips is a beast. He was about to break out. Song Yadong's a beast, dude. And I've watched Song Yadong for a while. I was actually on a Wildland Fire a couple years ago. And he fought in Houston on the Derek Lewis card. I think Derek Lewis versus Cyril Gahn. And ever since then, I've been a fan. Song Yadong's a beast. I think last week I did end up taking Corey Sandhagen to beat him. But I knew Song Yadong's a beast, and he hits really fucking hard.
He does.
And that's what Corey Sandhagen said in his post fight. He's like Song Yadong hits really. He didn't expect him to hit as hard. He said he didn't underestimate him, which I kind of felt like he did. I felt like he did. But he said that what surprised him is that he hit really hard.
Song he's been a professional fighter since he was 15 years old. He's been in the UFC since he was 19. I believe he's 24 now. Like he's been doing it his whole life, pretty much. I mean, a professional since 15. That's crazy.
And he just got tested with someone that was at UFC champion caliber. I mean, he lost to TJ Pilleroids, and then he lost to Peter Yan. So he took about a year off.
Said in the broadcast he's only lost to people who have been champion.
Yes, I didn't know. I guess that's true with Aljo. With Aljo, who's champion now. TJ Dillashaw, who was a champion, and with Peter Yan, who was a champion.
And that Dillashaw fight was even controversial.
Yeah, it was
some people say he won that fight.
Extremely controversial. I gave it to TJ when I watched it live, but I don't think I've rewatched that fight. But
I don't think I've seen it. I'll have to go back and watch
if
that.
you watch it and you look at the two of them at the end of the fight, this is what Corey says. If you just look at a picture of both of them after the fight and say who won, obviously people are going to say Corey. Corey's starting to become like a Tony Ferguson. Like this is what the broadcast said. He's starting to become known as this guy that when you fight him, you leave busted. Like Tony Ferguson used to be, like with his elbows and shit. People leave that octagon in just a bloody mess, and that's how Corey's been with TJ Dillashaw. I mean, he not only did he bust up his knee and make him have to get knee surgery, but then he also split his fucking eyelid open just like he did with Song Yadong. I can't remember if it was a stepping elbow like he did on Song Yadong, but I mean, when Corey Sandhagen fights, he busts people up.
His elbows
are just fucking brutal. They're just brutal.
I mean, his elbow last night that cut Song open. I mean, it didn't look like much, but it just cut him open.
Man, when before we get into the ending, I had Song Yadong. I'll come out here publicly and say this. I gave Song Yadong rounds 1 through 3. I had it 3 rounds to 1 going.
I kind of even had it that way as well.
And I watch a lot of fights. And I'm not saying I'm this great ref or this great judge, but I did have some, at least, if not 3, then at least 2. 2 of those first 3 rounds went to Song Yadong.
And that's what 2 of the judges had was 2-2.
Yes. 2 judges had it 2-2 and 1 had it 3-1 for Corey Sandhagen, I believe.
I think what we're kind of missing out on is the control against the fence. Corey had a lot. He did that a lot.
Takedowns. Corey Sandhagen shot 14 takedowns.
Only got one of them, though.
One of them.
Song was good with his takedowns, 2 for 2.
But that's what Corey said in his post-fight, is that was his plan, was to just take some power away from him. So every time he even feinted like that, he was reacting. He was either going down for a sprawl or he was putting his hands down. So Corey's saying he was taking the power away from him. But if you look at here, 130 total strikes from Sandhagen to 130 total strikes from Song Yadong.
Song was a little bit more accurate, it looks like, through about 20 or so less, 25 less strikes.
And Corey had the more significant strikes.
40 more significant strikes.
But I mean, like Corey said, Song Yadong hits so hard. And Song was so busted up, and they could have stopped that fight earlier.
The doctors kept the fights going.
They did all night. There was some with the one with RoboCop. I thought they were gonna stop that.
I thought they would too, and they didn't. They let
I think
go.
the commentators did too, and they also thought this fight was gonna get stopped in the second round, which is where I believe that.
Well, after he got cut,
come from.
Yeah, that round where he first got cut, you thought he has to get the knockout before this round's over. They'll probably end this fight.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's what they were saying. The commentators, as in they were saying that he's running on borrowed time. But if we look at how the doctor was last night, he was very lenient to these cuts.
Yeah, I think Song
let them lose.
I think Song was smart to not really go all out trying to get the knockout in that round.
And it was tough when I think it was the fourth round when he shot that takedown and got top control. And they're rubbing together. When he gets that top control, they're rubbing heads together, and that's just. And between the fourth and fifth round, when you saw that, it was completely separated off of his eyebrow. It was so big, and I thought the doc told Herb Dean that it's your call, and then Herb Dean stopped it. That thing was fucking nasty.
It seemed to me that the doctor did call it, but it kind of seemed he was about to let it go, and then he took his second look at it and was like, "No, we got to stop it."
That cut was nasty.
It was. That was a crazy
it was so bad
to really top off a night of
and
cuts.
not even like to take anything away from Corey Sandhagen. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people are saying, "Oh, the doctor." There's a lot of stigma that goes with the doctor stoppage, but it was due to a strike that Corey threw that split him open. That's a win for Corey. And he's saying, "Give me something for Christmas," but he wants to fight up. He said he missed out on the last time when they fought everyone. In the little like Grand Prix that this bantamweight division's been having that will end with Sean O'Malley versus Peter Yan, this big Grand Prix. Corey Sandhagen ranked 4, only 3 fighters above him, and he's fought 2 of them and lost to 2 of the 3. Maybe that's a good fight for Merab, the Walla Willie.
Yeah,
obviously Merab doesn't want to fight for a title against his boy Aljo. He made that clear. They asked him what he wanted.
They asked him. He weighed the
didn't
question.
say nothing.
Dude. Dana was mad about that too.
He basically just talked about how much he loved Aljamain Sterling. And Aljamain's talking about going up to 145, but he's got to get some title defenses underneath him. He doesn't have the hype that I think he feels like he has to become a double champ after this title if he ends up beating TJ Pilloroids.
Dude, I hope Song doesn't slide too far back. I think he really showed up in that fight. I don't think you can look at that fight and think too negatively of him. Like, he really showed up. I think he really proved himself.
It was a big testing point.
Like, yeah, he proved he can fight with the top guys.
Yes, he can. And I think he impressed me a lot, too.
He impressed me a lot.
I thought Corey was kind of going to dominate this fight.
Corey
stand on the outside and pick
underestimated him. That's kind of what it seemed like in the first round.
He hurt Corey. He had him on skates. He impressed me for sure. I would like to think that he fights more in the top 10 than the top 15. Doesn't fight above him. He fights down below him. I think a couple of good fights here. I mean, Dominic Cruz. I don't know what Dominic Cruz is gonna do, but Dominic Cruz did beat Casey Kenny, who Song Yadong beat, and Dominic Cruz only beat him by a split decision. I don't know. When I scored it, I thought Casey Kenny won. Maybe a Pedro Munoz, since obviously Sean O'Malley didn't beat him, but Sean O'Malley fought him at number 8 or 6, something like that, and then now he's fighting Peter Yan for a title eliminator fight. So maybe a Pedro Munoz. Rob Font, I wouldn't mind seeing Song Yadong versus Rob Font. That would be a hell of a fucking fight.
Song's a guy I can see getting into the top 5.
Oh yeah, I can see this list here, and I don't want to say anything, but I can pick people out that I do think Song Yadong could be after just based off watching him fight Corey Sandhagen, who's tied the most active, like the active UFC tallest man in the bantamweight division with Sean O'Malley. Only Corey Sandhagen and Sean O'Malley are 5'11" in that 135 division, which is the height advantage is huge. So yeah, I would like to think that Song Yadong's stock didn't lower after this weekend, especially 2-2 going into the 5th with Corey fucking Sandhagen. That dude's a fucking nightmare, man. That dude's a beast.
I think Song had good odds of going in and winning that 5th round and getting the fight, winning the whole fight, but That cut was just
It was nasty. Man. What a time. Like someone like you that hasn't been into this, which I haven't been into this sport my whole life, but the last 2.5, 3 years, I've just devoted myself and studied and watched older fights and kind of grown into an educated fan, like a hardcore fan of this sport and this organization. There's not a better time to be joining this shit than right now.
No, there's really not. You know, like my first event we went to UFC 278 here in Utah. And that was crazy. We got to see two legends fight their last fights in the UFC. Luke Rockhold and Jose Aldo.
And let's give about 5-10 seconds here. You know, a cheers to Jose Aldo, as literally today, September 18th, he has announced his retirement from the sport, which he told the Walla Willie that he was going to retire, but his manager come out and said that he's probably going to fight again in December. Today he made it official. He's stepping away. So here's to you, Jose Aldo. There wasn't a greater time in that arena that night than when Jose Aldo walked out.
When he walked out, the crowd was
I might even post it on social media just to give a little shout out to Jose Aldo. This is to you.
But that event to go to watch two legends fight their last fights, and then that surprise knockout at the end, Leon Edwards with the head kick.
Shameful I wasn't even watching live as it happened. I was over talking to Camden. Shout out to Camden. Man, there isn't a better time to be a UFC fan. I don't give a fuck what you say. There's not a better time than right now to be a UFC fan.
Getting in now. Joe Pfeiffer just coming in.
Now. Joe Pfeiffer
I'll
coming
be following
up
him, you know, is kind of the guy that's coming in as I'm starting. You know,
one of your guys. Something that, as we come to a close after last night's recap, we take a break from the UFC this weekend. We come back. There's Dana White's Contender Series, of course, on Tuesday. Don't miss out on that.
We'll have to watch that this week.
Yeah, we will have to for sure. And then next week as well, September 27th. October 1st, we come back. Mackenzie Dern versus Jan Yoian. It's gonna be a good card. Sadiq Youssef. We kind of touched on it a little bit last week. We'll touch on it a whole lot more next week with the breakdown. I guess since we have a break and we have a little bit of time, that we can slip some things. And I've got some questions to put Kobe on the hot seat here this week. Some questions that I saw in the comments that I would like to bring up just to put you on the hot seat before we get into this week's podcast.
What's this about?
The number one was this that I saw was, how fucking old are you? Really? No bullshit here. How old are you?
21.
21, like, publicly, or 21, like, in the government's eyes?
21, just in everyone's eyes.
Well, I don't know why you're so mysterious all the time.
What do you mean?
What's your favorite fucking color, even?
I don't know. Probably blue, maybe.
Blue. You said I don't know.
Probably blue.
Do you have a hard time making, like, thorough decisions?
Yeah, there's lots of cool colors, dude.
Who's your favorite UFC fighter?
Izzy.
Israel Adesanya?
Yep. I don't actually, dude. Robert Whittaker came up big when we watched UFC Paris a few weeks ago. Tai Tuivasa, I like him a lot.
But Israel Adesanya is your number one.
I think so, dude. I'm bummed.
Why?
I mean, he's just who I saw. Like, before I got into the UFC, he's who I kind of loosely followed.
He's the clips that kind of got you in.
Yeah.
Which, for that, was Sean O'Malley for me right off the Contender Series.
Mm-hmm. I saw a little bit of Sean O'Malley, too.
He's a big star.
I like Sean O'Malley.
All right. For the last question I got for you. Something big here. And I know that you might actually elaborate into this, so you can kind of discuss why. But if you're going to be stuck on an abandoned island by yourself, you can take 3 items. What do you take?
Ooh. It's a tough question. You knew this question. You probably thought about this question. What are you taking?
What am I taking?
Yeah, what are you taking?
I didn't think about this. Realistically, I would say just because I understand where I'm at. Like if I got dumped off into an island, I'm not going to try to front and act like I'm something else. So I'm going to get a flint and steel, something so I can start a fire because I'm not good enough to fucking sit there with the sticks and light a fire. All bushwood style. I can't do that. So I take a flint and steel. I think something basic to say would be like a water purifier, but fuck that. I'd take a big ass pot that I could cook things in. Obviously, I'll purify my water by boiling it.
Well, if you're on an island, it's salt water. You gotta get the salt out of the
But
water.
can't you boil it out?
Dude, I don't know.
Google that shit right now. Can you boil out salt water like if you were? Because if you were trapped on an abandoned island, there's no way you're making it off if you can't.
Let's see here. You can't.
So I guess this voids the entire fucking question.
You need to evaporate the water into something else, and the salt will stay behind. Is what I'm seeing. You'll need to bring stuff to do that, dude.
I think you need a degree to understand what that means. Or score higher than a 17 on the ACT.
Maybe, dude. You might need to.
And then probably like a hatchet that I could kill things with. Which I can kill things with my
easy.
bare hands. But what are you looking at?
Do things wash up on this island?
I mean,
We're using the shit on the beaches.
I don't know how many islands I've chilled on to wait for things to wash up.
Dude,
I don't
think
know
it
what
just
you're gonna
happens,
get.
dude. I think
you like a care
on
package. You're gonna get like a care
dude,
package.
just
off of
random
a
junk
ship.
washing up
Bro,
on the
okay.
beaches, bro. It happens.
3 items. All right, Kobe. Quit dodging the fucking question.
Dude,
3
flint and
items
steel
here.
for sure.
Flint and steel.
Flint
So
and steel.
you're in agreement with that.
A machete, maybe.
See, I picked a hatchet.
What's the third item, you think?
That's what I'm saying. I don't even think I said a third item. Mom, close your ears if you're listening to this, but probably, and no joke, a 1983's vintage, real authentic Playboy's magazine.
Oh.
Like a September, October edition where you're getting into fall colors, but you're not full-blown fall colors. You know what I mean? You're still brown bush, but that's my third item.
Maybe one of those GPSs with an SOS button. Get help.
An
bro.
SOS
Yeah.
button.
Get help.
God. All right. Well, that's all that we got going on this week in the MMA space. Of course, I'd like to thank you guys for watching the #1 Utah-based podcast in the nation. Roll the fucking outro. We're out.
Make sure you follow us on social media. Deseret_MMA on all social media.
Do it fast.
I'm not talking basketball, I'm talking about the money. Had to wear my smile cause being broken funny. Now I get these diamonds when I smile, get sunny. Bitch, I ruin dogs, you a pussy with some punk. Kicking shit like Karate Kid. I'm ballin' like Mikey, I've been that kid. I'm getting this money and makes them sick. I promise my mama will all be rich. Stay down for my fam, no, I'll never switch. My bills always blue, so I caught them stitch. Still struggle for years, but I never bitch. My fire keep burning, I'm always lit.